Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Now. I'm your host, Carly Iacono. Today we're breaking down net lease tenant expansion by credit type and what it actually means for how you underwrite your next deal. Every net lease deal comes down to one question: who's actually on the hook if the tenant defaults? And here's the trap. The answer has nothing to do with how big or recognizable a brand is. A massively publicly traded company can still leave you with a lease signed by someone with no real balance sheet behind them, while a private company you've never heard of can hand you a lease backed by real, verifiable corporate strength. So today I'm organizing tenant expansion around this one axis. Who's actually the tenant on the lease? Whose name and financials you're really underwriting. That gives us three buckets. First, tenants where the lease sits directly with a public rated parent company. Second, tenants where the lease sits with a private company, no rating, but still a real identifiable corporate balance sheet behind it. And third, this is the one that people often get wrong, brands where the franchisor itself is publicly traded and instantly recognizable, but the franchisor is not the one signing your lease. The lease sits with a local franchisee, full stop. To be clear, there are dozens of tenants actively expanding in each of these categories right now. I'm just picking one or two examples per bucket so you can see the logic play out. Let's start with bucket one. Tenants where the lease sits directly with a public rated parent company. Two good examples of tenants expanding right now are Casey's General Stores, tickers CASY. It's a Midwest-based gas convenience chain known for its pizza program. Side note, it's actually one of the largest pizza sellers in the entire country. As of fiscal 2026, they're operating just under 3,000 stores with plans for another 400 over the next 3 years. So that's a public company with a real balance sheet transparency, actively expanding into new Sunbelt markets. You'll typically see these deals structured as an absolute net, triple net lease, or ground lease with a 20-year base term signed directly by the corporate entity. And because of that, it's a common target for 1031 exchange buyers. Second example, Dutch Brothers, ticker Bros, is the drive-thru coffee chain out of Oregon that's expanded nationally over the past several years. They're known for their energy drinks as much as coffee. In Q1 2026, they had over 1,177 locations, up 16% year over year, on a stated path to 2,029 shops by 2029. Dutch Brothers offers public reporting, disciplined site selection, and a real estate pipeline that's outpacing its own initial targets. The credit behind the lease is the same credit Wall Street is pricing every day. Worth a quick aside here on gas convenience more broadly, Walmart has quietly built out roughly 450 gas stations, almost entirely in their own parking lots, putting it on track to be one of the 20 largest convenience operators in the country by count. So that's not really a net lease opportunity because these sites don't usually trade separately since they sit inside Walmart's own real estate, but it's a useful data point on where consumer demand for fuel and convenience is heading, and it lends credibility to the broader category that names like Casey's are expanding into. Now to bucket two, tenants that aren't publicly rated, but the lease still sits with a real corporate entity that has strong, verifiable financials, not an individual operator. Two examples that illustrate this concept well that are growing include Wawa, which is a privately held gas convenience operator with roughly 1,220 stores today, pushing toward a stated goal of 1,800 by 2030. They've been aggressively entering new states, Georgia, Alabama, and North Carolina, and now the Midwest with Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. Every one of these leases sits with the same corporate entity, no rated debt, no public filings, but a very real, very consistent name on the lease every time. Second example is Chick-fil-A, which belongs in this bucket as well. The company added 179 net new stores in 2025 to reach 2,863 total locations, its strongest growth in 3 years. And even more impressive, their U.S. system sales hit $23.9 billion. What's worth flagging here is Chick-fil-A's operator model. So the individual running the restaurant day to day is a local owner-operator who typically invests a relatively small amount and doesn't own multiple units the way a traditional multi-unit franchisee would. The real estate and the lease obligation sit with Chick-fil-A Inc. itself, a privately held family-owned company with one of the strongest balance sheets in retail real estate. So the name on the lease in bucket 2 is still a very real corporate entity, just not one that files with the SEC. The lesson, don't assume not rated means not creditworthy. Confirm who's actually the tenant of record before you price the deal, because these can be every bit as strong as public credit. Now for bucket 3, and this is the one that usually trips people up because the brand names are often bigger and more recognizable than anything in buckets 1 or 2. Here, the franchisor itself may be publicly traded, but that public company is not the one signing your lease. It's the individual or multi-unit franchisee, and it's their financials, not the parent companies, that you are actually underwriting. 2 current examples include Planet Fitness, ticker PLNT. This is the low-cost, high-volume gym chain known for its, quote, judgment-free zone branding, one of the largest fitness operators in the country by member count. As of Q1 2026, they had just under 3,000 clubs system-wide, and they're guiding to another 180 to 190 new clubs in 2026. About 90% of all Planet Fitness clubs are owned and operated by independent franchisees, and a meaningful chunk of that growth right now is coming from large multi-unit operators, some backed by private equity, buying up smaller regional gym portfolios and converting them to Planet Fitness. This is a useful case for landlords specifically, as these are large format leases, typically around 20,000 square feet, and the company's been actively targeting space vacated by struggling retailers, meaning Planet Fitness franchisees are increasingly the ones calling about your dark anchor box, not just your out parcel. And here's the bucket 3 tell. Franchisees own or directly lease their locations from third parties themselves, and Planet Fitness Inc. states plainly that it generally does not sign on to or guarantee franchisees' lease agreements. The ticker is real, the name on your lease is the local franchisee, and not the corporation behind that stock. Wingstop, ticker WING, is the chicken wing chain that's become one of the fastest growing names in QSR over the past several years, and largely the strength of their digital ordering delivery business is the cause. It's an even more extreme example of bucket 3. As of Q1 2026, they had 3,153 restaurants system-wide, and domestically only 57 of their 2,653 U.S. locations are company-owned. The rest are all franchised. They opened 97 net new restaurants in just the first quarter of 2026 and are guiding to 15 to 16% global unit growth for this year. This is about as asset-light and franchise-dependent a model you'll find, which means nearly every single new lease deal behind this brand's growth is really a bet on an individual franchisee, not on Wingstop, the corporation. And just like Planet Fitness, this isn't a gray area. It's spelled out in Wingstop's own franchise disclosure document, which states plainly that the franchisor does not guarantee a franchisee's note or lease. The franchisee or the franchisee's own business entity is the one who signs, and Wingstop Inc. is not on the hook if the franchisee defaults. The underwriting takeaway for this bucket, a public ticker on the franchisee tells you nothing about who's actually signing your specific lease. Ask who the operator is, how many units they run, and what their track record looks like. So here's why this distinction matters more than brand size. If you're a net lease investor, you need to match your diligence to the bucket you're underwriting, not just how famous the name is. In bucket 1, you're reading the company's 10K. That's the annual report every public company has to file with the SEC with audited financials and a full breakdown of the business. Bucket 2, you're requesting, hopefully, and verifying private financials directly, since there's no public filing to pull. Bucket 3, you skip the parent company's financials and underwrite the individual operator because the parent company's balance sheet is not what's backing your lease, and you really need to be careful and look directly at the franchisee. Here's the takeaway. There's real active expansion in all 3 buckets right now. The thing to remember, the size of the brand or the ticker symbol tells you nothing about who's actually the tenant on your lease. That's a question you have to ask every single time. That's it for this week. If you're working through a deal in any of these categories and would like to talk through the underwriting, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in to Commercial Real Estate Now. I'm your host, Carly Iacono, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.